Otherwise, I get told off by many things, really. Ladies, welcome, and thanks for sharing another session together. I have watched all of your stuff that you've done for the Academy over the years, especially Emily. Thank you so much. Welcome, Hannah. Is this the first time we've met?
I mean, I feel like I know you very well, Mark, but it might be the first time we've met, like online.
Hello. And Emily and I, we cross each other's paths at some stage, and we just say hello and things, really, isn't it? You know. Girls, thanks for joining us live. We've got some great images. Before we get going, though, bring us up to speed on who you girls are and how you met and the kind of the speciality. I know we're going to talk about Photo Barn at some stage later on today, and I know you've got some offers running at present. But let's talk. Should we start with you, Emily, because you and I go further back than me and Hannah. How did you get into this glorious world of equine?
Oh gosh, well, unbelievably, it's about 2 decades ago now that I became an. I know. Do I?
No, you don't. I have to say no anyway, don't I? You know, it's that. Otherwise, I'm in trouble. But no, you don't look. That's kind of.
Thank you, Mark. So how did I get into it? Basically, I love horses. I became a photographer. I did shoot weddings and families and everything that goes along with that. And a friend of mine and I were having a chat one weekend over a curry, and we said, oh, why don't we do equine portraiture? Why don't we do what we do for families, but for people with horses? And so the kind of idea was born in terms of private commissions, the way we produce albums and frames, and kind of fell in love with equine photography and decided to specialize in that. So sort of fairly quickly knocked off the weddings and the families and really focused on equine photography for like 2 decades now. So it's been pretty epic, but it actually is a choice. You know, I decided what I loved most about photography, and it was photographing horses and people. So yeah, here I am.
Wicked. Hannah, what about yourself?
I actually started my own company doing website design and graphic design, and always gave my photography for free because that's the bit I enjoyed the most. So I definitely wasn't allowed to charge for it, because if you enjoy the job, you don't make money from the job. That was the rule I was, you know, told myself. And luckily, about now, I think it was probably 12 or 13 years ago, a great friend of mine bought me an entire year's mentorship with Emily. And wow. She said, I'm sick of seeing you give photo shoots away, photography away, all your skills away. Go and learn from her. And yeah, spent an epic year with Emily learning everything about running your own photography portrait company, and have never looked back and gone from strength to strength. And I joined the training barn with Emily about 8 years ago, because I'm sort of proof of the pudding, and guys, if I can do it, anyone can do it. So so yeah, and now I take private commissions all over the world and live an amazing equine photographer's life.
Wow, brilliant. Emily, is that something mentoring wise you still offer today, as it were? Do you still give that chance to actually buy a whole year of you?
Yeah, absolutely, we do. Wow. We do this amazing group, well, we do both one-to-one and group year-long sessions. So yeah, the training barn, which now Hannah, so I think maybe 8 years ago, I said to Hannah, you know, she was thriving after the mentorship with me, and I said, do you want to join the training barn and start helping more people so that we can reach more people? And so Hannah and I now do that together, and yeah, absolutely, got loads Brilliant. Of training on offer.
Yeah.
And you know, is this you know, traditionally I would have said this is a bad time for equine photography now at this time of year. because I just go back from my little experience in, girls with horses campaign in the 80s and 90s. Whereas October came, horses were getting clipped, just forget it. And then you look forward to April when you can kind of, start your real job. Is that a similar world today, or are clients more acceptable of the horses in winter being photographed as well? How does it work?
Yeah, go on, Han, you go.
So I would say Emily and I have always been super busy up until Christmas Eve, be it that it's orders or photo shoots up until Christmas Eve. Then you take the Christmas period off, and then January and February is always that. We both shoot in January and February, and it might be photo shoots that are creative shoots that we have booked, a model or a collaboration with someone. I would say we drop right off for clients' portraits until March, probably mid to the end of March, and then the diary gets super duper busy again. So Emily and I always plan to have a super quiet January and February, don't we, Emily? We always plan it. We never panic. We never look and go, what? This has never happened before. Why didn't I plan for this? So we absolutely use January and February to do all our marketing plans, our goals, our targets, everything that is basic foundation level of our business gets done and dusted in January and February.
Wow. And could you mentioned that you kind of can go all over the world for commissions and things, really. Is there a certain place that you can go at this time of year and you never be affected no matter what?
Yeah, I spend quite a bit of my time in Dubai.
In Dubai, is it? Yeah.
This is the only time I can shoot there is October, November, December, January, February, and then it's too hot.
Wow. I'm just going to throw a question in there. It's not been asked. I've just you said Dubai. Is it different being a woman going to such a location, whereas it's a man's place, in some areas around the world, it's very difficult for women to do what women should be able to do. Is that something that you don't have to answer that question if you don't want to, but no, is it difficult?
It was definitely a fear of mine before I went there. And I was super lucky that I went with one of my collaborators, so a dressage rider who teaches out there. I joined him on one of his training weekends just to get the lay of the land, because I'm a bit of I like to get all my ducks in a row. I like to know who I'm meeting, where I'm going, what time I need to be there. So I did basically a recce to Dubai for my first trip, so that I had, and that was one of my questions. Yeah. Dubai is really Western. It's actually it's very open. It's full of opportunities, and they really want us over there, giving them whatever skills or talents that we have, and because they've got no tax or whatever, people do tend to keep the money in Dubai. So I've always been treated wonderfully over there. And my first trip over there, I went in Ramadan. So I had to learn all of those rules really quickly. But as long as you're respectful to them, it's a wonderful place, and they're super friendly.
Awesome. I just had to ask the question. I've never been there, but it's kind of in my head. I would have thought there's lots of restrictions and so on. So it's really, really good to hear anyway. Anything you girls want to say before we kick into the first image? Anything you want to, Emily, I've got to ask, is that more of a painting in the background than it is photograph?
How I just angled my screen. It is actually a painting.
Ooh, I didn't know you were a painter.
Oh yeah, well, I've been progressing into mixed media for the last focusing on mixed media now, but with a foundation of photography always. So
ooh, we'll chat about that another time.
Yeah.
Excellent. Shut up, Mark Cleghorn. Let's get on with some images. I think that was the question that came through, but they didn't say that. Right, first image of the night. Who's going first? Hannah? Emily?
Who's mine. There? Yes, that's mine. This was shot about, oh goodness, I don't even want to say. It was probably 10 years ago. And it was one of the first images I felt as it happened. And I remember that feeling so well of, I was going through the motions of my shoots, and I was remembering which poses I should do. And I used to have a shoot book. And I kid you not, in the shoot book, it used to say things like, horse and rider over the stable door, put the arm up on the stable door, get rider to look at you, then look at horse, then look away, make sure the reins are behind the door. I wrote down every little thing. And that's how I worked for about 4 or 5 years of really getting that foundation so that it would come naturally. And I think this image is probably the first image I let go of all of those things because I had them in my foundation. I let go of all those things, and she was just hugging her pony, and then she turned to look at her pony, and I said, oh, just give him a squeeze. And because I said squeeze rather than give him a hug, she just did that and then pulled her foot up. And I remember thinking at the time, if I'd said hug, she would have wrapped her arms around his neck and would have changed the image. And as I shot it, I thought, that's going to be cracking. That's amazing. And there's elements to the image that add to it, like her boots and her hair coming down. There's added lines and added movement. But I think it is, for me, the memory of saying, just give him a squeeze. And I felt the moment happen, which was probably the first time I felt an image rather than conducted an image. Does that make sense?
Did you think you needed to conduct really in the beginning because you needed to learn your flow, was it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I always remember thinking when I started training with Emily, I took it back, no offense Em, I took it back to my driving lessons. And my driving instructor said, I'm not teaching you to pass a test, I'm teaching you to drive. And once you can drive without thinking about it, you can pass the test because you can remember to check your mirror every 7 seconds because you're not worried about what gear you're in, because you know what gear you're in, because you know how to drive. And so when I came to portrait photography, I remember thinking, if I can learn all the basics like driving and know what gear I'm in, so I know what the next set of images is going to look like, then I can start really concentrating on the smaller, finer details of the image because the foundations are already there.
Cool. Question coming through is, I've been told I should never get between a horse and a woman. That's written by a man.
I
agree with that.
I would go
If
with
you're
that.
in the world of equine, it doesn't matter how long you've been married to them or going out with them, the horse is more special than you are, whether you like it or not. Yeah.
100%, never put a limit on them either.
Yeah. Emotion. Let's talk emotion. A lot of photographers get a lot of kind of rider to camera communication, whereas this is more an emotion between rider and animal, isn't it, really? How much of your photography now is more about the emotion compared to the photograph, as in the portrait?
So I would say the 99.9%, in fact 100% of my images, I am aiming for it to be emotive over everything else. So, you know, even if I have to slightly recrop a post image, I'm more interested that there's true connection, relationship and characteristics that come through in the image. You know, if this little girl was underconfident with her pony, or, you know, you can just tell that she loves this pony, she feels very safe with the pony. And I do always think that that foot flick shows her confidence, that she feels easy with me. And so I'm able to be an observer at this point rather than a contributor. And it's something I remind myself when I'm on a photo shoot: be an observer, be an observer. You're not a contributor. You're not forcing the image to happen for your lens. You just happen to stumble upon this gorgeous couple. And yes, composition, lighting, posing, background, location, you know, get it all right. But really the moment needs to be very simplistic and as if I'm just observing. Okay.
Question for Emily. I've picked up a camera since lockdown, but been riding for 20 years. And I love the idea of equine photography. Where do I start?
Oh, well, that's quite an easy one, because if you've been riding for 20 years, you'll know horses, you'll understand horse behavior, you'll also understand the safety aspects around photographing horses. So if you own your own horse, then I would start photographing your horse and the other people that are on your yard. If you don't own your horse, I suspect, given that you've been riding for 20 years, you know many people who do own horses, and I would go and start building your portfolios to just test out your camera, test out, get some inspiration from Pinterest or other photographers' websites, and go and practice on some friends first. That's where I would start. And then when you start to feel a bit more confident that you're actually, excuse me, able to produce a beautiful portrait of someone, then that's when you need to think if you want to take it further in terms of charging people.
Okay. Technical wise, for a moving horse at a gallop, let's say, is there a, besides for panning or whatever it is, did you have a go-to shutter speed?
I'm like the most untechnical person you could ask, and
I was going to say, you are asking the wrong girl.
Given that all my photographs are out of focus.
Emily, stop there for a minute. Hannah, do you have a go-to shutter speed for a horse at a gallop?
Yeah, I would say so. It needs to be anything really over 600, 700. The higher you can get it. You can shoot a galloping horse at 300. Like you don't need to overthink it. But if you have the ability, you're better off pushing your ISO a little higher and getting a better shutter speed. Sorry, cat's going to come in. But I would say get your exposure right. So it does want to be crisp. You're better off having a bit of noise, but make sure your exposure's right, because you don't want to be bringing it, I don't want to mess with my ISO, but I want a high shutter speed, so I'll shoot it dark and then I'll bring it up in post, because that's where you start getting that sort of dirty grain coming in.
Cool. We'll stay on that for a minute. There's a couple of questions about black and white. I think we should get them in soon. Staying on panning. Should I be panning with a moving horse, or am I better to try and capture with shutter speed first? Either of you.
Well, I would say just pop your camera onto continual focus, and then shoot as the horse moves. But I mean, in our career, we've probably shot less than 10 galloping horses. Okay. I mean, after venting and.
So in our private commission portrait work, most 99% of the images are stood still like this. In my sort of more fine art work, which is why I kind of laughed, because most of my shutter speeds are at about 1/6 of a second when they're galloping, so that I do create that blur. But actually, if you're doing portraiture like this, then you don't really need to get up to the dizzy heights of 1/1000th of a second. It's only probably if you're doing the event photography, trotting, cantering, and maybe a horse galloping across a field. It depends sort of where your niche is, really. But Hannah and I don't do a lot of that, except for my sort of stuff, which is all completely blurry. So
yeah. I also think if it's a worry for anyone, this is the absolute point of doing friends or model calls, where you can just say to someone, listen, I just want to put my camera through its paces. Could you just canter your horse up the field a couple of times? And as they're doing it, just change your settings, look back on the computer, in Lightroom, it will tell you what settings you had on your computer, and you'll think, okay, I definitely need to be over 400th of a second. That's done. And in the book it goes, and you move on.
Brilliant. Cool. Black and white. Do you have a go-to setting for black and white? Is the first question.
I mean, you're going to have to narrow down which year, because I am one of the. I'm looking at this image now, and I'm wanting to change so much about it, and that is the process of a creator. Is that I want it to have depth. I want proper blacks, but if you ask Emily, I was that girl that I would get creatively stuck. So I think, I know what I'll do. I'll change my edit. Don't change how I shoot. Don't change my lighting, whatever, my composition or what I was shooting. I'll change my edit. That'll make all the difference. And then I go in with a nice grey and white. And Emily would always just say, yeah, it's great. And then a few months later, I'd look back at that shot and I think, well, the blacks are missing, the contrast is missing, there's no punch in the image. And she'd always say, I mean, I didn't want to say anything at the time, but yeah, you got there, let's add the blacks back in.
I always think that there's a hint. There's a word black and white.
Absolutely. I know.
If an image doesn't have a black of some kind or a white instead of some kind, it's probably not going to be a black and white. But I think the quality of this black and white, by the way, is absolutely superb. Stable wise, for a minute, do you tend, obviously, if this is kind of just losing the detail in the background, do you find yourself having to work quite hard to actually burn down quite a lot of detail, or do you naturally get the fall off?
You really do naturally get the fall off, and just the way to go about it is just put your hand in front of you when you're near the stable. And Emily and I find this all the time, like if the sun is right at the front of the stable but you've got a foot back, it falls off nicely because most stables have, you know, overhead. Just open the stable door and move them back in if you can't shoot them right on the stable door because the sun's blaring. But you'll see, if you move your hand back into the stable, you'll see exactly where the light it naturally falls off, and just make sure your subject is in front of that fall off, and everything else very naturally drops off, and then you just enhance it in post. But we don't do masking and blacking out the background. We would do brushwork.
Okay. Grain or no grain? So I gather they mean, do you usually put grain on top of an image when you've finished? Is there a...
No.
Emily,
No.
anything on the artistic front? No, nothing?
No, I think when you start talking about stuff like that, if that's a fundamental part of your style, yeah, and you're going to take that through for some time, then, but if it's like, I'll just try it on this image, I'll just throw it in, then your consistency is going to be all off for your clients, you know, and for your development creatively. So if it's a fundamental part of your style, yes, put it in and keep going with it. If not, I would avoid sort of playing a little bit and trying out if you're not really sure. I mean, behind closed doors you can do that, but don't do it to for your clients.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's a style. If you're going to go down a route of grainy images, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you've got a style to actually be showing that off and things. Really. Do you have a go-to in Lightroom or Camera Raw for black and white?
Lightroom. So yeah, we'll do predominantly 90% of my edit in Lightroom, and then if there's things to remove, then I do that in Photoshop. But yeah, Lightroom. And used to be a presets girl, then flew over to profiles, and now it's by hand.
Cool, brilliant. Should we move on to the next image? Is that okay?
Yep, please.
Woman, horse and dog.
Woman, horse and dog. Again, this was shot probably 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. The thing that holds it for me, there's a few things that hold this image for me. One was that I set up this shoot with my friend, this is Lara, and her horse Rudolph, who is 22 in that image, which he doesn't look 22, he looks amazing. And her dog was quite old as well. She's just about holding on, actually, so she must be like 30, that dog now. And in my head, I had this vision. We were at Studland. We were going to go up onto the dunes, down the dunes, onto the beach, and get some amazing beach images. And I really wanted to test myself, because everyone kept saying to me, you should take horses on the beach. It's the most amazing thing. That's the thing you should be doing. And every time I went to the beach, I thought, but you've got water one way, so that's one shot. and then you've got sand the other, which is the second shot. And I love, you know, rustic wooden stables, the forest, you know, yards offer so much to add into an image. And I kept thinking, but a beach has got water one way and sand the other. What more can you do? You can only pose a horse and human so many times with the same background. But I wanted to test myself, and I thought, okay, well, this will test you in your posing. And funnily enough, this image just happened because we were walking up to the actual sea, and as Rudolph turned to the right, he saw the sea for the first time and looked like this. And I remember sprinting backwards because I wanted to shoot at 200, because I knew the clouds were just that moody atmosphere. She obviously kept the dog with her, and everything. Now, I've always looked back at this image and thought, I don't know whether I love or hate the lighting, but it is what it is. And the moment's so special to me as the photographer, and her as the client, and her mum, who's got this enormous print of this shot, because I think the moment itself was funny to all of us, where Rudolph was like, what's going on over there? But it's just the three of them. It doesn't need to be, again, I'm just observing it. It's not like I've set it up. They could be looking at a forest. It doesn't, I didn't want the sea to be the main feature, which was why I was going to push myself on the beach. But this is my favorite shot from the whole collection, because it's the three of them looking out onto whatever the future, or whatever sort of you want to, you know, be artistic about the wording. But I love that it just looks like the three of them against whatever.
Cool. You mentioned about the lighting and everything else with it and things.
Yeah.
How much of the lighting do you try and look at in the likes of painters over the decades or centuries? You know, do you look at them? Because I look at this. If you took her out and basically that's what you would have seen with a painting of a famous horse,
Yeah.
you know, 100 years ago and things. Really, the lighting that you've put on, or the sun has, is very a painterly effect, in fact, isn't it? The only thing that's missing is your backlight, and you can't have it both in photography, not unless you want to do a bit of work and things. So is that something that you really look at? Is there artists' work that you look at and things, really?
I think I've always gone with what's the most flattering light for a human. You know, whenever you're commissioned, whenever someone's paying you, they don't want to sort of look at an image and think, I mean, artistically it's great, but that's not flattering to me. So I've always gone with, you know, either backlit or shaded or overhead. I do like directional lighting, but again, it's directional lighting mostly on the horse. If you take this image in particular, so say we could see much more of her face, I would, if I was setting this up again, I would turn her, because the light is on her back right now. And the darkest part of the image is actually the front of my client. So my eye isn't going straight to my client's face here. It's going to the highlighted portions of the horse. It's fine, because this is it's a wider piece. So it's not actually necessarily just about my client at this point. It's about the relationship between the three of them, and they're sort of conquering the world and they're looking over something. But lighting wise, I think that's what plays with my mind here, is that the back of her is lighter than the front of her, which if I like to play within the rules, especially when it comes to lighting, because lighting's always been a fear of mine of getting it wrong. But having gone through, you know, my associateship and, you know, panels and competitions, when you know the rules, you can break the rules. And I feel like this is one of those images that it probably breaks a lot of rules, but it works, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. There's a question just come through on color palette. Do you find yourself muting colors, or do you pretty much go with real color?
Yeah, I've always been a bit of a bugger for that. Is that I do tend to pull my saturation down. It's just something I like. I'm out of the very muted. This is probably the most mute I have got in my career. And I like it to be, I suppose painterly would be what I would be going for, but it doesn't work with every image I shoot. Therefore, I can't keep consistency. So I have to be very careful with how muted. So what I've learned to do is actually bring the contrast down, bring the shadows up, and then use the curves instead, which gives me the look that I want to do.
Okay, this question come through for Emily, sorry. If you were shooting this yourself in a similar way, would you be going for a long lens or would you be using prime, Emily?
Well, all my lenses are prime at the moment and have been for the last 10 years, I think. So I would be shooting this on prime, but if I wasn't shooting on prime, I'd be shooting on a long lens. Like 200 mil, definitely.
Yeah.
And what kind of prime would you be using to shoot a similar image yourself, Emily?
I've got 180 mil prime. I shoot on a Leica medium format camera, and so their prime is 180 instead of 200.
Okay, and what kind of f-stop would you approach this image with?
4.5.
Yeah. Hannah, similar with you. What kit do you use at present?
Presently, I'm Nikon 850D with a 70-200, and I predominantly shoot at the 200 end unless I physically can't get back. I do have a 35 mil as well, just for slight difference in my creative work, not my client portraits. And I tend to shoot 4.5 as well.
I didn't know you shot medium format, Emily. I'm going to ask a question if that's okay. Do you find that slowing you down? Is that good?
Yeah, it's really slowed me down, and it was a real challenge to switch initially, but the quality of the files and the depth is so beautiful that I can't go back now. But yeah, I miss more shots than I get, and I take about 10 times as long to get them. So.
But the good news is you'd never go back now.
No, well, when you get it, it's phenomenal. So it's worth the misses and it's worth the extra time. Yeah.
It's a shame, really, that medium format has disappeared into the sunset because it's almost unaffordable, isn't it now? In the real qualities of kit and things, really, you know. I can't believe I was looking the other day and I sold my Hasselblads in 2001, was the last Blad I ever owned. And it's just phenomenal when you think it's over 20 years ago since I shot a medium format with. I still got my 5.4, but that's a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
Anyway, anything else to finish off on this image? I think it's beautiful. By the way, I think many photographers would be trying to bring more out of the clouds, and there's times where less is more, and I think you've nailed it on that. And it's a really interesting way that you've faced the client to the dark side, as it were. It really is with it and things, really. But I think the light on the horse, I'm not sure if it's good to light a horse's butt or not, but I think it really, from me, the uneducated horse guy, I think it looks great, and it's painterly in my eyes anyway.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome shot. Next. Whose is this one?
We're going to stick with me, and then the next four will obviously be Emily's, and I can this shot happened because the client commissioned me for a photo shoot and said, I don't want to be in any of the shots, but I want my horse photographed. And I've always thought your horse is a horse, like you can shoot it over the stable door open, but really once you've got a black background of all the movements a horse can make, and then a lovely conformation stand, and then maybe a few more movements out of the stable, apart from moving the locations, so all you're doing is photographing a new location. You're not photographing a new horse or a new side of the horse or a new personality trait of the horse. And that's the bit that I was struggling with, was the personality of a horse comes out when you put their owner with them. Because if they're a cheeky horse, they're cheeky with the person they trust the most, which is normally their owner or their groom in some cases. And so I sort of was thinking on the spot of, how do I get her to be part of this image when she was nervous to be in front of the camera. And I noticed that she had done her nails and she was wearing a good enough outfit that she absolutely could have been part of the image. So I started the shoot off by doing this shot with her, just to ease her into it. And she was really sort of stood back from her horse. And I said, just so you know, I'm getting from your elbow forwards for this shot. And then she totally relaxed, because she knew that she could pull any face she wanted to, but it was just all about her and her horse and this very gentle touch. And it was because, I mean, she has the most beautiful hands as well. She really does. And I wanted the double bridle to be there because her discipline is dressage. And it was very important to her. This horse had only just come back into dressage work. So she really wanted that element to be pulled through as well. This image works, I think, on another level with no tack. But that's a much more intimate image, whereas this is a connection, but with the discipline included. And I did get her to do the rest of the shoot, and she was in the shoot because I built her confidence up by starting with this shot.
This is definitely a go-to image, no matter what shoot you're doing, isn't it? You know, if you don't shoot this image, you're an idiot. If you're just beginning, you know, the person who was asking about where do I start, and Emily was saying, where do you start? If you know a horse and you've been around horses, you know this relationship. You don't need to see the horse. You just need to actually simulate it. And, you know, what is great about this image is the quality of black and white is absolutely exceptional. And I know I'm looking at on a calibrated monitor, but it's an exceptional black and white quality, and that's really what makes this one exceptional. You know, we see loads of images going through our photo critiques and everything else with it and things really, but that you've absolutely nailed your black and white. You know, whether you began as a passionate monochromatic photographer or not, you keep this going and things really, because that is just absolutely out of this world with it and things really.
Yeah,
Emily, would you say that this is a go-to image for somebody getting going?
Yeah, definitely. It's quite I don't want to make it sound easy, but it's quite an easy image to get, in terms of there's not 4 legs to worry about, there's not a head and a tail, you know, it's a hand and a horse's nose. So if you can get to the point where the horse is still-ish, which we were talking about dog photography earlier, and they're much harder to photograph because they're so fast. Horses are slower, and if you can get a horse to be quite still, then this is an easy-ish shot to capture and get right, because there's so few elements in it.
I think it's a good breathing image as well. If you need a creative time, you know, you're going, I'm knackered here. You know, I need just chill out, the lot of you, will you? Just give it a flipping polo or a treat, a bit like I photograph a young child with their parent, you know, just hold your mum's hand, you know, just stay there one space for 1 minute. It's just like, don't move. I think this is a good breathing space. It's bring your genie to work. Come on, you come in, but for now, I don't need you. I'm just going to reset myself. And I think I'd hang that on my wall, and I've got no interest in horses.
Yeah, I would say there's the only caution with this is like, if the horse is nippy and doesn't want to play this game, don't go down the road. I've had one and she said, I want that image, and she had the horse that wasn't going to do it.
No,
absolutely, he was not going to do it.
The other thing that's a slight caveat to me saying it's an easy shot is if you go out and think, oh yeah, I'll go get that shot, but your background is poor and you're shooting on 35mm, it's not going to look like this. Exactly. So actually there are elements that make, you know, that are trickier, that make this work. but it's sort of, yeah, if you get those elements right, then it's a nice shot to get.
You know, I think that where photographs become exceptional is when something is so simple, but you know how much work has gone into nailing it in camera in the first place with it, instead of fixing it in Photoshop as the inverted fingers come in again. But yeah, love it. There's questions. I'll go to the next image because we'll stay. I mean, there's a lot of questions going on about black and white here. Okay. So I mean, you said that you've moved away from presets. I've got to summarize them because there's so many. Because you're moving away from presets, what are you judging your black and white on?
The reason I came away from presets in black and whites and profiles in black and whites was that it would work with one image. And I think that's it. That's amazing. And then I would go to the next image and the preset I used just wouldn't sit on the next image. So let's flick through the other presets that I had. And then the profile started happening. And then one day I just clicked on the black and white, profile, I guess it is, at the top of Lightroom. So put it into black and white, and then I edited it by hand as if I would a color. So I pulled the contrast, the shadows, the blacks, and the lights down myself in the curves and using the basics. And then I was finding my own black, because every image is different. And, putting a preset on 5 different images that are in 5 different locations with slightly different light, then they just don't look the same. So yeah, I found that but that's because I've trained my eye.
Yep, of course. Are you ever we got to move on. I'll come back to these questions in a minute, otherwise we'll never get to the images, will we? Next image.
Yeah. Black and white.
Surprise, surprise. I'm okay with it,
This is my best friend, and she was.
Which one? The horse or the woman?
Well, actually, yeah, both.
Okay, just checking.
Tam and Beetle, and they. I was asking her to go to the next stable for the next part of our shoot, and I've always been. So when I very first started shooting, I'd be that person that I'd say, right, let's walk down to the field and we'll start shooting, and they'd start, and I'd be like, oh, that's lovely. Oh yeah, take the shot. Oh, that's great. And then I would come back to Emily, who was mentoring me at the time, and I'd say, look, and she'd say, okay, so did you set this shot up that you're walking down to the field? And I'd say, well, no. And she'd go, yeah, and I can see that because she's not walking nicely. You've got a nice barbed wire fence going down either side of the road that you're walking down. What is it that you actually, and of course I was just in the moment like, oh, she's walking, this will be cracking. And so I got myself out of, if you're going to set something, if you're going to take the shot, set it up. You are the one that's in charge of this, except for this image. This, I was ready, and which is another reason, have your kit ready, have your settings, have your settings ready, because as she was walking across, she just looked into that stable to look, and I just knew, I was like, that's a shot, that's a great shot. And I took it, and again, I had that feeling of going, that's going to be something. And I probably took 2 or 3 in that series as she was walking, but there's something about her looking into the empty stable, and Beetle's looking straight past her. She's looking away from me. He's glistening as well. That light's just hitting him solidly. Yeah, there's so much to love from the image. And I think the empty space on the left, which is where they're going, they're heading into something. It sings for me, but it wasn't technically set up.
Beautiful. Right.
Woo!
Miss Hancock's.
Okay, so what can I say about
totally different from the last image.
Totally different from the last image. So this was a young stallion that I shot up north. I'll say up north. It was a good 4 or 5 hours from the south where I'm based. So I feel like that's north. And this was a part of my journey where like Hannah said, a horse is a horse is a horse, right? So when you photograph it, it looks like a horse. But over some years, 10 years maybe, I started to want to challenge myself more, and I felt that there was something else in me that wanted to come out in my work, and I couldn't work out what it was until I started using mixed media over my images. So the way I've created this is a combination of dried flowers that I picked, you know, probably a year before, you know, flattened them all, pressed them or whatever, dried them out, cut them up into pieces, photographed those, then took the shot of the horse, then worked on that in the computer, printed it out, put wax over the top of it, re-photographed it, then photographed the flowers, and I think with these particular flowers I also waxed them and photographed it, put it into the computer, worked it all together, you know, like multi whatever you call it, putting images on top of images, and then printed it out again and continued to wax over the top until you get this beautiful layering effect. And this was really one of the images that were sort of early on starts to me exploring what I could do with other mediums and bringing them in to combine them with the photography.
Is this what you got up to in lockdown? Was it, you know, when did this start? Was this a long time beforehand, or in lockdown did this kind of thing develop more? I've got to ask Hannah about lockdown and things, really, and I have to, because
That's great.
it was a changing kind of time in the world, wasn't it, really, you know?
Yeah, this actually was quite a long time before lockdown, I would say. I can't remember exactly, but I think I've been experimenting with this sort of style for maybe 7 years now, but kind of behind closed doors. For quite a long time, and yeah, lockdown produced actually some very different work for me, and that's where the painting sort of stuff has come in, because I wasn't out photographing, so I started to paint with my hands and lots of other stuff. So
so I think we're going to hang on to the questions to the end. Is that okay? Because there's quite a lot of them, and I want to get through the images and things, really. This is the image that we've been using to publicize tonight and things, really. Go. I love it. It just reminds me of Spain, and I'm a Welshman who should be Spanish. It just reminds me of something Balearic. I've got no idea what's going on, but there's just a grace here, and so I get to choose the images that I promote and blah blah blah. Anyway, so go. Sorry, Hannah.
This image actually was shot about 12 years ago in California, and it's been sat on my hard drive for quite some years. And then as I started to experiment with what's called encaustic painting, so that's using wax, which is actually a very historical, it was used in ancient times to paint. I started to experiment, and this image came up more recently actually, and I basically, the fundamentals of course are a great image. You know, I've taken a photograph that really works, and the color palette really works, and then on top of that I've got my paintbrush and my wax and started to layer it, and again photograph it, put it back in the computer, work on it a bit, print it out, wax it again, and build up that process till I get the texture and the feeling. To be honest, I saw a brilliant quote the other day. Can't remember what the quote was and can't remember who said it, but
it was a great quote.
It was a great quote where it said, people could, along the lines of, people can critique my work and make up as many stories about why I've created it and what's going on behind the image, but actually all I'm doing is producing beautiful images that I like, and that's really what I'm doing. I love the feel of this. I love the color palette of this. I could hang it in my house and look at it all day. There's just something very soothing about it, and there's nothing more to it than that, other than I like the feel of the texture and the feel of the movement, but it's so subtle. I like that there's no detail really in it, but you totally know what it is. And so, yeah, this is a classic one of my encaustic photographic images.
And is this a style that you are still progressing through? Is it the future for you in the short term and things? Yes.
Yeah, it is. What I'm working on now is being able to create these as original pieces. So for quite some time, I was too nervous to sell the original because where I do the process of re-waxing and then putting it in the computer, I would always end up back to a photograph. And that's okay, but actually I love texture because I love the look of texture and I love the feel of texture. So as soon as, although you can replicate that in a photograph, you can't get it in the physical form if you go back to a photograph, other than, you know, texture paper or whatever. So my progression now with this is to be able to produce these as large scale original pieces, but to also have the print version of them.
Excellent. Ink.
So this again is an image.
Ink, yeah. I love it.
It is ink. And this image really signifies for me what's wonderful about being creative is that experimentation makes you take leaps in your business. If you give yourself time to experiment and just play, this is one of my favorite images actually, and I've never released it as an image to sell, or I've never even printed it or framed it or anything. It's sat on my hard drive, right? But what a crime to have this image not out in the world. But what it signifies for me is that it reminds me to experiment, and this series that I have in my head, right, because it's not actually a series yet, it's one image, but there is a series in my head of these ink images where basically what I've done is I've taken a photograph of a horse rearing in my particular style. I've then edited it, printed it, I've then put it in water and dropped ink on it and then photographed it, and then put it back in the computer and edited it. So that was the process for this image, but there's something about it, again, and I think it's quite similar to the image before, that just feels lovely. It feels, there's something in it, I don't know what it is, but I know that I want to expand the series. But I'm one of these creatives that I actually mull things over for, I mean, it could be years. This is years now, but it will come. I will produce a series of work with ink like this, but I'm just finding the right images for it.
I play around with the Hannah paper. I'm not sure if you know that. So I print it, then I wet it, and then I smudge it again, like we used to do with Polaroids years ago.
Oh, cool.
So we used to strip the Polaroid and then actually move the emulsion and everything else with it and things really. And I really enjoy the Hannah rag because it absorbs the ink, but then if you wet it long enough, you actually start to move the ink. And it's, you know, the good news about it, it's repeatable because you can print the same image 3, 4, 5 dozen times, just like the black and white darkroom once upon a time. But then, of course, the great thing about it, you find that if you soak it for longer, or if you add something else to it, or you add like a ink dye, that's why I said is it ink straight away. But if you add ink dye to the water, it starts to soak it up as well. I just love that stuff. So
you know what? I love speaking to other creatives, because what a brilliant idea. I'm on that tomorrow.
It's fab, honestly, and I can't believe that Hannah don't even promote that. I don't really show much of my stuff.
I know, I was going to say, I didn't feel like I've ever seen one of those images where you've done that.
Yeah, no, I got, you know,
that's amazing.
Yeah, but it's just a bit of fun, you know. You know what I love just hearing about. We're going off on a tangent here. I'm sorry if you've got to go on the hour, because we ain't going to be finished on the hour. You know, one of the things that you said was about kind of adding more value to your business with the more creativity. Do you know what? I struggle more with trying to encourage photographers to be more creative than just jumping on the treadmill all the time. That, you know, to begin with, you jump on the treadmill to learn the technique that you need to earn a living. But then along the path, you must remember where the passion came from, you know. And if your passion is equine, like you were saying, you would be idiots not to delve into the world of equine. You know, I'm in the world of dance. So not that me, all right. But I love figure form movement. That's it, you know. And it doesn't matter if it never sells. That's very hard to get through to people's heads. It's because at the end of the day, the journey of creativity makes you stronger, makes your brand stronger. And as long as you're aware of what makes you a living and basically what people are stopping and looking at you at, I think it's a whole different world. I still feel after more than 25 years in the world of digital photography, we are still too basic. We have not touched it, you know, and I hate that. And I hate it. And that's why, you know, if you learn to take a photograph, just take the photograph that you want to take, isn't it? If somebody else likes it, it's a bonus.
So I remember being hosting a course with Emily, and one of our delegates said, "Oh, I think I'm going to double expose this." And we were like, "Oh, what, like in Photoshop afterwards?" And she said, "No, I'm going to do it in camera. I'm going to double expose it."
Yeah.
And we both were like, "Sorry, where's that setting?" And she flicked down through the menu and did double exposure and shot 2 shots and showed it on the back of the camera. And we were like, how, I mean, how long ago was that, Em? Like 6-7 years ago? And we just, that's why you've all got to talk to each other, because you can't know everything and you don't know what you don't know.
All right, I'm getting nagged here by people who've got to go home. So we are going to get through to, honestly, I think we need to do another night, all right? That's very soon. And I'll show you mine if you show me yours, is the old expression in Wales. I'm not sure what that translates to in this new world we're in. Anyway, this reminds me of Sam Haskins' photograms. Have you ever a fan of Sam Haskins at all?
I don't know. I'm going to write his name down.
He was one of the biggest influences for me in my kind of teen years, in multi-printing, multi-photographing. Sam Haskins. I'll try and find the book on the shelf in a minute and things, really, but this reminds me of that kind of thing. Back to you. Go with the picture while I try and find it on the shelf. Yeah,
no worries. Okay, so this is an interesting image for me. It's a newer image, and basically what I've done is actually picked a reject image that on first look I put in the bin for many reasons. It's an Icelandic horse, and this image just didn't cut it at all for me. And one of my challenges more recently was to go back through my hard drives and to look at my images that I had rejected. And so this image came out, and at the same time I collect flowers, and I collect flowers that are dried, and I dry them myself, and I have many in my studio that have been sat here for years, 2 years, 3 years, maybe more in many cases, and I'm trying to find ways to use them, because I know that I'm drying and collecting them for a reason, and I know that I want them to be in my work, and so I'm experimenting with how they can be present in my work. And this is just an image that I was playing with, again, experimenting, seeing, but actually this is sold as a print, which has been really nice. And it's I think quite often as photographers we go through our images and look for perfection, and if it's not perfection we chuck it out. And actually, as I go back through my hard drives, I'm seeing completely different things now than I did 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. And so going back through those images and selecting rejects and trying to push myself outside the boundaries that I would usually work towards has been really a revelation, actually, because I feel like I have this huge amount of potential work already without me going and doing anything else, without me picking up a camera again. I could create art for the next 10 years of just what I already have available to me right here in the studio.
What is art, isn't it?
What
is
yeah.
You know, I was doing with the grandkids this morning, we were photographing Lego with the iPhone, you know, all the kind of the classics, you know, but they're 6 and 4, you know, and then we're building a volcano on Sunday. We've decided now. I've just looked up online how I create paper mache, because I haven't made paper mache since I was a kid. You know, it's stupid things, isn't it? You know. Anyway, look, I don't want to pretend I'm anything else than a very old man here. Yeah, can I just say, girls, I know we've got to do questions now. Thank you. I think if you haven't inspired anybody else, you've inspired me again tonight. So thank you very, very, very much for that. And things. Let's do some questions. Just something's come past while I was trying to find the book, which is in the lounge, but I did find it online. This is photographics, yeah?
Oh wow.
Okay. And basically this, I had this bought for me for my 16th birthday by my sister, and it was the biggest influence, and a lot of the stuff is darkroom stuff. However, if you look at his photographic stuff, it's just absolutely amazing. I can't believe it's worth 77 quid now. So I might be selling it. But anyway, no, I won't be. Guys, before we get to questions, Training Barn, it's Emily and Hannah's kind of thing with business and training workshops, etc. I'll just put the link onto the chat panel, but I will put it across onto Facebook today, tomorrow. Go show them some love and things, really. Tell them how lovely they are, because I think they're wonderful. But again, I'll stick it in the chat panel no matter what. Anything before we go to the questions, anything you want to plug or any talk about? I can see there's 70% off your business offer there. The course, what's that? What do they get for it?
So the business course, yeah.
Okay, I'll grab it. Then we go.
I hope so. I really hope so.
Yeah, as a web designer.
I know. But let me tell you, web design has moved on swiftly since I did it full time. I used to have to code. So the business course delves into 6 different modules, and it's from foundations and setting up your business through all the way through to marketing in person, marketing online, and then getting yourself noticed for what you do, your passion, your talent, who your target market is, and figuring out how to connect with them, and even figuring out who your market is. And then sales, pricing, and products. And so many photographers that we speak to absolutely love posting on social media, love the photo shoot, love styling their clients, and then it comes to presenting the images and they're like, I don't want to do it, I'll just give them an online gallery. And then they phone us and they go, oh, they're not buying the frames that I thought they would. They didn't go for the album. And it's because it's a process. The whole thing, you need to hold their hand all the way through and be the creative artist that they want you to be.
Thank you. Well put. But I'll put it in the links there and people can go and have a little look and things really. But right, let's get back to questions, shall we? Thanks for everybody staying behind. Seriously, I mean, I've loved it. In fact, just while we've been doing that, John's just said, really enjoying the conversation. Although this is not my style, it starts to inspire me to experiment. So we worked. 2 people. That's me and him.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So yeah, that's changed the world. Really, you know, I look at it like that. If you just change one, you know. Anyway, do you ever use flash with horse photography?
We both have, but we don't on a regular basis. So we have creatively, but not for portraits.
Would you use LED now more than flash, given the option?
Yes, I've just bought myself two to go and experiment with, because exactly that reason. It's battery operated. It's not, it's not as in your face, and it gives a very different final look as well, which is really interesting to me while I'm figuring this out. But yeah, I've just bought two sets to go and play with.
What are your rules of third? Sorry, what are your? I'll read the question, not what you're thinking in your head. What are your rules of composition, Emily?
Thanks.
No, it said that, and then I'm going to ask, what's your rule of composition, Hannah? Okay, so get prepared, yeah. So Emily.
For me, you need to have what feels like a really balanced image. So when I'm critiquing work, if the feet are too close to the bottom edge or the head's too close, that really bothers me. So I always want to have a nice balance. Now, like Hannah said earlier, once you know the rules, you can break the rules. There are many times where I have created images with awkward poses, crops, and they work for some reason, and they break the rule of thirds, they break the rule of having a nice balanced image and all these things, but it works. So I think it's about distinguishing, if you're just getting a nice portrait shot, make sure it's balanced, make sure, yeah, you hit the thirds if you can, but if it's a bit more experimental and pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, then push those rules as much as you want.
Okay, Hannah, the same to you?
I mean, same answer. The only thing I would add into there is just don't be that photographer that takes masses of wide shots and thinks I'll sort it later. I'll crop in later in Photoshop or Lightroom. I'll just make, because you can always tell, you can see images that have been shot at 70 mil so that they can rebalance it later. I would say compose it well in camera, and it shoots that image sky high. But same rules apply.
Creative cropping for sale. This might refer back to the hand and the nose shot for a minute. Can you just talk about that a little bit more as far as in the sales room? Would that be a main sale, or would that be a secondary sale, do you think?
Everything we shoot is shot to crop as we've thought it through. So I don't have a wide shot of that. If that is as it's shot, I may have taken it in ½ an inch maybe, but I don't have a wider shot. And we don't sell the same image wide and cropped. Each image as it's shot is cropped in camera and shown to the client like that. So now obviously if your client says, I've got a frame that I already want that to go into, therefore I need it by 12 by 8, and you go back to the file and you can add in a bit more because you've cropped it in, then that's fine. But we also crop to no ratios, so our crop might be 16 by 15.5 because I want that ½ inch gone. We don't allow any rules to come in when it comes to cropping.
And that's the good news when you use a custom framer, isn't it? You can do it at any size and things, really.
Yeah.
When you're choosing to crop severely, one leg is not visible. The question's a bit weird. So notice photo only has one leg and the other leg is cropped off. Why? That's the question. Okay. I was trying to find a more whatever the word is, a better way to say it. It's not. I'll just say it. There you go. Why?
I would say that's probably my shot of the horse walking across Tam and Beetle walking across the stables, maybe.
Could be.
So one leg missing. Yeah. Do you know what is art? It's breaking the rules because that's the way it works. I mean, potentially between us and the people that are on here as friends, that's just as I shot it, and the leg's
Sorry.
gone.
sorry, as a question come through, it's funny. We're going to do it next now. This is for Emily. What's the stupidest thing you've done to a photograph so far? I gather they're on about, the biggest mistake you've made.
Oh, well, I mean, I did set one alight the other day to burn it because it was awful and filmed it. I was like, this is going. So I filmed it and put a match underneath it, made it. And then my husband saw it later on Instagram and was like, Emily, why were you setting your studio alight? Did you have any water? Like, why would you do that?
Yeah. Not near varnish, not near hairspray, and not near terps. All right.
Yeah. I was experimenting some years ago, and I got crayons, my kids' crayons, and I started going over the top of the photo, and I got really excited about it, and I took it over to my brother because I was quite happy with. I was like, this is quite cool. I really like this. And he asked me if my son Barnaby, who was 5, had done it. Okay, that's not going to make it into the world.
Yeah, but that's in your brother's thoughts, isn't it? He could be a doctor, couldn't he, or an engineer, and
he still can't understand why all my photographs are out of focus, so I'm not holding much stock by his judgment.
I'm jumping in there for a minute, okay? We had a stupid time delay in Washington, and Debbie said, we'll fall asleep if we don't do something. So she went down to the reception desk. She said, when is the next trip anywhere? And they said, oh, it's Washington by night, and it leaves in 5 minutes. And we're like, great. My Polaroid camera was on about you, yeah? And basically everything I used to shoot was out of focus.
Yeah.
I'm chatting away with these Americans who've never been to their capital before and everything else. We were chatting away and they were lovely, they were. And then she said, oh, I've seen you've taken quite a lot of photographs. Could I see some of them?
Oh.
Yeah. I'm handing them back. And there's no comment coming. And she said, oh, that's... and she didn't finish the sentence. I just loved it. She just handed them back. But as long as I like them, it's art. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Talked LED, we talked flash, we talked black and white. Money. Is there real money to be made in equine photography now? Because there seems to be a lot more equine photographers. Big one.
Oh, yeah. So, funny enough, we spoke about this earlier, and do you know how many horse owners there are compared to equine photographers?
No.
Like, if you think of the wedding industry, wedding photographers are up against thousands of other wedding photographers, and the worst thing is that couple only get married once. I mean, some obviously people get married more than once, but they find their photographers really at the same place. So if you exhibit your wedding photography at a very nice 5-star hotel, you're going to be up against 6 or 7 or 10 other photographers. As an equine photographer at the biggest events, in the world, Badminton, Burghley, Po, Aachen, there's maybe 1 or 2 other photographers, and you're so different that people go, great, I've got a choice. But that's why it's really important to understand who your market is, because there's a market for the £100 photographer who wants to just dip their toe in, wants to photograph on a Saturday morning, edit the images during the week, give them an online gallery and make £200, £300, £400 from each shoot. There are other photographers that want to be commissioned at £400 and make £1,000 on top of that. There are other photographers that want to be commissioned at £10,000 and get £100,000 after it. But there's room for all of us. Like, genuinely, we are scratching the surface of equine photography, the market.
I also think I could probably only name 10 or 15 people actually that I think are playing serious in the market of equine photography. And, given that I keep abreast of like what's mostly going on in the industry, really, there's not very many people at all.
Emily and I genuinely pay our bills, pay our mortgages with our photography businesses. The training barn for both of us is a side hustle, when you're asked that many times to help others and you want to give back to the community and the industry, and when we've made as many mistakes as Emily and I have, we might as well tell you not to fall in the same holes. But we were working it out earlier, and it's only about 20% of our time and finances that come from the training barn. 80% of our time, effort and finance comes from our photography business, and it pays for our lifestyle.
Okay,
and we have bougie lifestyles.
Brilliant. Let's go through the quick fire questions. Some came in advance and things. Ready? How long should I allow for a shoot?
2 hours.
2 hours,
Yeah. How far should I travel for a shoot?
as far as you want.
I go to America, so don't limit.
Okay. Is it okay to ask a client to travel with their horse to a location I use?
Yes.
Yeah. Basic starting point for a session fee. As much as you can get.
Yeah, it really depends. We're quite cautious about, because if we say go out and charge 595, if you haven't got all your ducks in a row and everything to make sense for you to be 595, you'll never get it. But equally, we wouldn't want to say go out at £35 because you're never going to cover your costs, let alone pay your mortgage. So it really depends. That's why actually the business school that we do helps you put all those blocks in place, so that most our training barn clients are coming out somewhere between 395, 495, 595 for a session fee.
Yeah.
There's also, if you have a look on Training Barn's YouTube channel, there is a pricing video that I did a couple of years ago that explains your mindset around pricing as an equine photographer.
I think the higher price you are, even if you never charge it as much as it is, the better the brand is. So if you put out a £600 fee and you're selling that at 300 quid, that's marketing. So better to have a higher fee than actually start with that and things with the basic kit to take along on a shoot.
You only need one camera, one lens, in my opinion, and just whatever camera you've got, fine. And then the 70 to 200 mil zoom lens, and shoot mostly on the 200 mil end.
There's two other parts to that question. Should I take a ladder?
I've never used a ladder on a shoot ever. I think, to be honest, it would be a little bit of a spooky element for a horse potentially, so we just wouldn't bother. No, stand on a fence if you need to.
Yeah. Should I take any kind of backgrounds?
We don't. That's not to say you shouldn't if you want to shoot on backgrounds, but everything you see in our portfolios are used without backgrounds.
How many shots should I show a client?
We aim for 120, so we might shoot about 400 on a shoot and then edit that down to about 120.
Okay. How many styles of clothing for the owner? Oh, owner's a harsh word. Rider. I think that's nicer. Rider. Anyway. Sorry, three
separate outfits. Yeah.
Would there be 3 different styles in that, or is it just anything the client wants? Or 3 different styles.
If you want to go.
Yeah, I was going to say you can go casual, smart, or you can go casual, smart, and glamorous. Depends on the client you're working with, but there's subtle changes in each of those outfits that creates even more variety. So your casual could have a hat and a coat, a scarf and gloves and jeans, and then you take the hat off, then you take the coat off, then you take the scarf off. So you've actually got 6 different variety of styling just for that one outfit, and then so on.
Just another one's come through again. Sorry. How long does it take you to edit 120 images for the presentation?
So I would shoot for 2 hours and edit for 2 hours only, but that includes download, backup, and preparing for clients. When there was one year in particular, I did a lot of shoots, and I managed to get a productive editing time down. So however long you shoot for, I would allow for editing, but no more.
Okay. Biggest selling size?
Of frame?
I gather so, yeah. Do you sell glass size or print size?
Print size.
Print size,
Print
okay,
size. I think
been asked this question.
my biggest
So
one.
what's the most common size that you would sell?
30-inch.
30-inch, okay. Hannah, the same
Yeah.
for you, or?
Yeah, I would say all my 3-in-1. I would say that, yeah, 3-in-1 or my 30-inch,
30-inch,
24-inch.
By the way, I sell glass size, and then the image gets smaller within the frame. So we actually decide on the actual, the overall size that's going to go in the wall, and then we basically decide the image. For those who've asked that question in the past, you'll know that. Do you I think this is to Hannah for a minute. Do you mainly show black and white images?
No. I'm predominantly colour.
You shot yourself in the foot with that one, girl. But that's why you didn't need all those black and whites.
Going through them, I thought that's an interesting choice, Hannah.
This might be because this was a question in advance, and it might be relative to the only image I was showing to promote here. The creative image, has it got room in fine art galleries? I love that question. I'd like to say yes to it straight away, but
yeah. So yes, I'm sure it does. I have taken a deliberate decision to currently not work with galleries for many reasons. I've got many artist friends, and one of the biggest things about galleries is you give away 50% of your income straight away. And because I love the business side, I love marketing myself. I've had 20 years practice at marketing myself, and I know I can sell my own work. I want to be able to sell direct from me with no restrictions that a gallery will put on me. That's not to say I won't work with galleries in the future. Maybe I will, but for now I'm not. But I'm sure, I would like to think my work would have a place in galleries.
Yeah, nice. Do you still attend exhibition events? I don't think they meant events. That's why I put the word exhibitions in there.
Do you mean it as in exhibiting our work?
Marketing wise, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How long does a viewing take?
As long as it takes. Well, we'd love to say 2 hours.
Yeah.
Emily and I have both been sat for 6-7 hours at viewings, and it's like, but it's been wonderful. It doesn't, viewings for me personally do not drag. I absolutely adore the time I spend with my clients creating art.
When you're getting a nice big paycheck for sitting there.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to sit with them for 6 hours if they're not buying stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a prostitute, it's no more than an hour. Okay. I'm just too old in this game now. Okay, we'll bring it to an end. Creating the passion for fine art photography. Any advice? I think you've touched on this today already, Emily, to be honest.
I think it's all about not being scared to experiment. And if you want to pick up your kids' crayons and start scribbling on a photo, do it and see what happens.
Don't show it to your brother.
Yeah, just don't show it to your brother. There's many pieces that I have produced that a family member has, in the most loving way, laughed at or thought my kids did. And that's okay. And you have to be brave enough to not stick with, the perfection of photography. And that's the thing, when you click that for that image, because it's a millionth of a second, what you shot is what you shot. Whereas with the fine art side of things and being more creative in terms of the after process, the world's your oyster. You can do whatever you like. You can put whatever media, just anything you can do. It doesn't matter what it is, but you have to be brave enough to try. Even now, sometimes when I'm painting, I don't like it when my husband's at home, because I feel that I don't want him to see me making silly mistakes or something looking stupid. And that's silly, because all that's doing is holding me back. So be brave, and experiment as much as you can, and don't worry about it. Just keep going, keep trying, keep doing everything you can to work that creative muscle, because the more you work it, the stronger it gets and the easier it gets. And yes, you'll still make mistakes and you'll still make images that look awful and people may or may not laugh at, but that doesn't matter because you're on a journey. So yeah, that would be my advice. Be brave.
I think that's a lovely thing to end on. I just wrote that down. Brave enough to try, and yeah, I think that's what we should end tonight on. I think it's really, really great. Girls, ladies, women, amazing photographers, creatives, whatever you want to be called. Thank you for being A, great human beings, and B, being so candid with us and showing us, you know, that creativity counts.
Yeah,
you know,
sure
and I
does.
think. Yeah, so you've definitely inspired me, you've definitely inspired John, and you've definitely inspired the others, I'm positive, even if they haven't said it. But wonderful, thank you so much, and we are going to do another one of these soon. I'm telling Laura whether she likes it or not and things, really. And
lovely, Laura.
Thank you very much, ladies. I'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Remember, everybody, if you want some more information, head over to the training barn. I'll pop that back over on the links below. And if you're not a member of the Photographer Academy, this will be live on YouTube on our channel in 2 weeks. We'll see you then. Thanks. Have a great night. See you all soon, wherever you are in the world.
Everyone.
Bye, girls.
Bye.